Hey everybody, it's Chelsea Coghill here with Campus and Community Recreation, and today we're going to look at crawling for our instructional video. So when people think of natural movement or primal movement, animal flow, all these buzz terms at the moment, the first thing that comes to mind is often a bear crawl, or in MoveNat we call it the foot-hand crawl. So we're going to look at crawling and some techniques and skills that are involved in getting the movement to be the most efficient in the body and to sort of protect your joints and build the strength and conditioning necessary to make this movement really good. So we'll go to our movement space, and the first thing you want to think about, or the first thing that people say when they're learning crawling techniques, is that their wrists really bother them. So I highly recommend that if you're experiencing that in this quadruped position, that you just take breaks as you need to, and there's some really good wrist stretches that we can do. Where you can start is just by coming into this knee-hand position, so supported by the knees and the hands, and you can just gently shift your weight from side to side, forward and back, and make some gentle circles in one way around the wrists and the other. We can externally rotate the arms, and then again doing the same thing. So just inviting a little bit more movement and mobility into those joints, into the wrist joints that we may have lost. So if we're sitting at a desk and we're here quite a bit and we're not used to weight bearing onto the wrists, that deep wrist extension can be a lot for some people. So don't be afraid to take breaks. A couple other wrist stretches that you can do. This is nice for the forearms. It's just taking the fingertips towards the knees, spreading the thumbs away from one another. I'm going to send my weight back, so hips towards the heels, and just gently bending the elbows in towards my torso, and just feeling that stretch into the wrists. And my personal favorite is actually backs of the hands onto the floor, spreading the fingers nice and wide, palms face up, and again I'm going to shift my weight back slightly so that I can feel that nice stretch into the wrists and into the forearms. So again, at any point, feel free to take those wrist stretch breaks. So the next thing that people tend to struggle with is the movement pattern itself. So it is a contralateral pattern, which means opposite hand to the opposite knee. And so the best way to start is we'll just start in the knee hand position. So you want to establish a nice strong base. You'll notice my back is nice and flat, so you got to bring a little bit of tension into the trunk. I'm actively pressing the floor away with me with my hands, and we're going to start with the movement pattern itself. So I'm going to bring my knee about 6 inches in, and then the wrist back slightly to meet that knee. So this is our short side to start. I'm going to bring the opposite hand that same distance forward, and the opposite knee the same distance back. So the view that you see is the short side, and if I was going to set this up the other way, here would be my long side. So whenever you lose your movement patterning, just come back and find the short and long side. So from here, I'm gonna lift one hand and one knee and take a step forward, and then you'll see I've alternated my short and my long side. Take a step forward and a step forward. Take a step back, same thing. So we can start here, again, creating as much distance between the wrist and the knee as you need to. So if it's too much to be quite close, then you just bring the hand a little bit further if it's too much of an extension of the wrist. So again, forward and back. This is a nice stable movement, doesn't require a ton of conditioning or strength, and it's a good place to start to begin to build that mind-body connection of the movement pattern itself. So the next thing we'll look at is actually the foot-hand crawl. So our points of support move from the knees and the hands to the balls of the feet and the toes. So again, this one requires a little bit more strength and conditioning. We're building that core strength and shoulder stability. I'm going to tuck the toes elevate my knees, and we can just start here by building the strength of the core and then release the knees down. So we're gonna be crawling from that knees hovering. Some common inefficiencies with the crawl is to have the bum quite high up into the air and maybe some excessive rounding through the trunk or the spine. You wanna imagine that your knees are in tall grass. So they're just hovering like an inch off of the ground. So to start our hand-foot crawl, again, I'm gonna set up my short side and my long side. I'm gonna engage through the trunk, elevate the knees, and I'm gonna keep those knees nice and low, softly planting the hands and the feet. So if you're crawling in nature, you wouldn't know necessarily what your surface was gonna be like. So you don't wanna be smacking the hands down or the feet. You wanna be nice and soft. So start that movement nice and slowly. We say that speed can mask inefficiencies. So it's not about speed at first, it's about getting the skill, building that technique, building your conditioning, and working your way up to potentially doing your foot hand crawl for 45 seconds, maybe up to 2 minutes as an interval. So I like to add a foot hand crawl to a workout as like an interval on its own. So 45 seconds to a minute, as I said, but just start with 10 to 20 seconds, go slowly. You don't have to go fast. As you build your technique and your skill, then you can add the conditioning component by going a little bit faster. And you'll find that if you're crawling for a minute or two, it's quite the cardiovascular conditioning exercise as well. So you'll be breathing hard and sweating, hopefully. So if you have any questions, or if there's anything that is working or not working with your crawling, please comment on the video, and we'd love to see how you're doing with your natural movement practices. Check out the natural movement workouts that we've posted on our resource page for some warm-up and sort of some conditioning movements that will help you progress into your foot hand crawl. So thank you so much for watching and playing, and I hope you enjoy playing with a new movement.